Hey guys, it's Nicole. I'm back with another video, and this video is going to be about a book. I do want to say in advance that if you've checked out my channel recently or subscribed to my channel, thank you so much. It really does mean a lot to me. Every single one of you, I see that number go up, and I'm very thankful for each one. I know that my channel isn't for everyone, and I am just getting started, so this is definitely a work in progress. But every single person that interacts with my channel in any capacity means a lot to me. So I just wanted to say thank you, and now we can continue on to what the video is going to be about. So if you've been watching my videos before from my channel, I have basically like a series kind of going on. I've been making videos about the books I've been reading, and most of these books I read last year. I read a lot of books last year, and like I mentioned before in a previous video, it's because I kind of set aside the time. It's because I kind of set aside the time to just sit and read, I don't really like to just carry around a book and go, oh, maybe I'll do it, because then I'll never get to it. So I have to set aside the time and go, this is reading time. So that's how I get to it. Reading 35 books in a year definitely takes some determination. So if it's not for you, totally fine. If you read even just one book, I think that's great, honestly. I really do. This is just me being an overachiever as usual. But as I've said before in my other videos about books, that the books that I'm currently making videos about are just some of my favorites that I've read over the last year. I've read a lot more than this, and if you want to see all the other books that I've read before, you can follow me on Goodreads. I have all of my books there, and sometimes I write like little short reviews just of like how much I liked it or if I didn't like something about it. And it's like basically a full list of everything I've read. So if you're interested in seeing other things that I've read, you can follow me on Goodreads. I update it pretty frequently. I don't really post my book readings on Instagram, so if you want my books, Goodreads is where to go. And that's just under my name. I don't change my name or anything for any of my channels. But anyway, so this one is one of my favorites that I read last year. This actually is the first book in what's going to be at least a 2-book series. The second book hasn't come out yet, so we don't know. But I picked this book up because it was very heavily advertised first, and so obviously the title was right there for me to see. So I saw the title and definitely became interested. And I don't normally get hardcover books, but I happened to this time because I really, really wanted the book, and I loved just like the cover art, and I loved how it was, so I really wanted to get this. So the book we're talking about today is Book of Night. It's by Holly Black. She's actually writing, or it's going to be released, the second book later this year. I forgot what it's called. I think it's like Thief of something, but I don't remember for sure. But I don't normally do that. Like if I know that there's going to be like a whole series of something, and that's just the first book, I don't normally read that until after everything's come out, because I hate the waiting. I hate it so much. It's so awful. It's agonizing, and it's been agonizing. So it wasn't on purpose. I just accidentally got this book, and it was like, oh, it's kind of perfect. Guess I'll just read it. Oh man, there's a second book that comes out later. But anyway, I loved the title because if you're like me and you're into anything fantasy related, you're definitely going to be interested in this as well. So I'll go ahead and read the synopsis that's here on the inside page. So, Charlie Hall has never found a lock she couldn't pick, a book she couldn't steal, or a bad decision she wouldn't make. She's spent half her life working for glow mists, magicians who manipulate shadows to peer into locked rooms, strangle people in their beds, or worse. Glow mists guard their secrets greedily, creating an underground economy of grimoires and to rob their fellow magicians, they need Charlie Hall. Now, she's trying to distance herself from her past mistakes, but bartending at a local dive, she's still entirely too close to the corrupt underbelly of the Berkshires. Not to mention that her sister, Posey, is desperate for magic, and that Charlie's shadowless and possibly soulless boyfriend, Vince, has been hiding things from her. When a terrible figure from her past returns, Charlie descends into a maelstrom of murder and lies. Determined to survive, she's up against a cast of doppelgangers, mercurial billionaires, glow-mists, and the people she loves best in the world, all trying to steal a secret that will give them a vast and terrible power. So, anyone who's into fantasy, I'm sure that sounds incredibly interesting. It's definitely one of those really cool, fantastical worlds where everyone has a shadow, but their shadow is not just a product of light being cast on them and then a shadow being cast as well. It's something that's a part of you and like an indication of your soul, and it can be manipulated and used like with magic to do things and kind of get away with them because they're shadows and so they're not always easily seen. So it's kind of like having like an invisible little assistant attached to you that you can use to send into a room to steal something and then slide back out, you know? So that's why they're called glow-mists. That's why they're typically criminals, you know? You're stealing things and possibly murdering people. And I love this book because the main character is not a pristine, good person, you know? Like, she's not the I'm a perfect moral angel or, you know, just always being right. She's like, I've made mistakes in my life. I grew up stealing. I'm the best at lockpicking and stealing things, but I'm trying not to do that anymore because that's not good, but I can do it. And it did make me a lot of money. So I kind of love that about her. She's not this perfect moral character. She's more human in that sense. And I kind of love that, especially in such a fantastical world where shadows are these things that you can, if you have the ability, the magic to, you can manipulate. So yeah, like it says in the book, like it says in the description, Charlie, the main character, has a sister, Posey, who really wants magic because she really wants to be able to manipulate shadows. But she does not have magic, unfortunately. And Charlie's boyfriend is Vince. And like it says, he does not have a shadow, which is interesting because who doesn't have a shadow? In this world, everyone has a shadow. And in that world, everyone should have a shadow. So it's interesting that he doesn't. But it's a really interesting read. It really is. There's so many twists and turns, and I so did not see so many things coming. Like, specifically what's going on with Vince and his non-existent shadow. I had some theories, and they were all wrong. And it really got me, and it was really good. So I really think if you like any kind of fantasy stuff or just even kind of like mystery, because it's kind of like a mystery, like you spend most of the book trying to figure out what's going on with Vince, basically. So if you like fantasy or if you like any kind of mystery, you're definitely gonna like this. I really do think you will like it. It's so well written, in my opinion. I've never read anything else by this author, Holly Black. I've never read anything else by her. But this is her in the back, you know. This is actually her adult fiction debut, but she's written some other kinds of things. So this is kind of like a debut for her, and I think it was a really great start. I think it was so good. I think that it's not going to be it's not going to be hard to sell this and sell the second book that's coming out because they're just written so well. And like I said, there's just something about characters that are written that aren't necessarily on the moral high ground all the time, you know? I think that there are a lot of characters that are, like, let's talk about like Katniss Everdeen from The Hunger Games. If you haven't read those books, they're really good. If you've seen the movies are pretty close. There's some things that are different, but they're pretty close. Katniss Everdeen is pretty much a morally always correct character, you know? Like, yes, she would try to take care of her family in some less conventional ways, but she was doing it to take care of her family, right? And like her volunteering to take her sister's place in the Hunger Games and doing all the things that she did to protect her family. It was to protect her family, so morally correct, right? Which is great. That's a great kind of character to read about, you know, because I think that it's kind of like she's always the hero, even in the small circumstances. And I think most of us are not always the hero in small circumstances. And so reading a character that's like that can feel very validating and exciting. So those characters are great too. And I love, don't get me wrong, I love The Hunger Games. I love Katniss Everdeen. I love the characters and everything. But there's something different about this particular book, this particular character, because she's not on the moral high ground here. She's a thief. She knows she's a thief. She doesn't steal because she needs to. She steals because she can, because she's good at it, because she learned how at a really young age, and she fine-tuned those skills, and she was just able to keep doing it. And it became very dangerous, which is why she stopped doing it. But that's the only reason she stopped doing it. So she had no reason to do it and no reason to keep doing it. She was just doing it for fun. So she's not exactly in the moral high ground here. So I think that's what makes the character so interesting. And maybe that's what attracted me to the book, honestly, because reading that inside description was definitely something that drew me to actually picking it up and reading it. So I'm going to go ahead and read the first page like I always do. This book actually starts has a prologue. So I'm going to read the first page of the prologue because I think that's going to be more beneficial to anyone who might be interested in this book. So, prologue. Any child can be chased by their shadow. All they need to do is run straight toward the sun on a lazy afternoon. As long as they keep moving, it will be right behind them. They can even turn around and try to chase it, but no matter how fast their chubby legs pump, their shadow will always be a little bit out of reach. Not so with this child. He runs across a yard dotted with dandelions, giggling and shrieking. His fingers close on something that shouldn't be solid, something that shouldn't fall before he does onto the clover and crabgrass, something he shouldn't be able to wrestle with and pin in the dirt. After, sitting in the mossy cool beneath a maple tree, the boy sticks the tip of his penknife into the pad of his ring finger. He turns his face away so he doesn't have to watch. The first poke doesn't go through the skin. The second doesn't either. Only the third time, when he presses harder, frustration overcoming squeamishness, does he manage to cut himself. It hurts a lot, so he's ashamed of how teeny the bead of blood is that wells up. He squeezes his skin to see if he can get a little more. The drop swells. He can sense the shadow's eagerness. His finger stings as a dark fog forms around it. A breeze comes, shaking loose maple seeds. They spiral down around him, coptering through the air on their single wing. Just a little drink every day, he'd heard someone on the television say about their shadow. and it will be your best friend in the world. Although it has no mouth and no tongue, and there is no wetness at its touch, he can tell that it's licking his skin. He doesn't like the feeling, but it doesn't hurt. So that's the first page of the prologue. The prologue only goes on for like another very short paragraph on the following page, but I'm not going to go into that because I only do the first page. That's how I do things. So if that sounds like something that's up your alley, I loved this book. I love fantasy kinds of books, and I really think you will like it. So I recommend it. Now, I did not give any spoilers at this first part of the video, but I am going to talk a little bit more about what else I liked in the book that does come with spoilers. So this is a part of the video where I'm going to be talking about spoilers from now on. So if you do not want any spoilers, thank you so much for watching. This is where you should stop the video now. I appreciate you coming to my channel, and this is it for you. Okay, so now we're going to go into the part where I talk a little bit more about it, and this definitely has some spoilers. So the twists and turns that came with this book came with Vince. So it's kind of obviously mentioned in the description of the book that Vince has something going on that's different. He doesn't have a shadow, which even in this world, even in a fantasy world, everyone has a shadow. So why doesn't he have a shadow? Well, we learn that he doesn't have a shadow because when he was a little boy, he was actually that little boy in the prologue. And he learned that he could feed his shadow, but you can only feed shadows human blood. And they will basically become completely, I don't want to say indentured or like, because they're not like, I guess you could say like their best friend. I guess you could say it's kind of like a best friend situation, but it's also very much enmeshed. So it's not healthy, let's put it that way. But this little boy clearly was lonely. Vince grew up lonely. Now, we learn that Vince is not actually named Vince. His name is actually Edmund Carter from a very rich family, but Edmund Carter was believed to have been killed many years ago. So at first, we think that he just faked his death and that somehow he lived and now he's here just, you know, under a new identity and cut his shadow off for, I think, because his original story was that someone came up and stole his shadow, which has happened to people before because shadows in this universe are like a commodity, so that's not unusual. But then he says later on that his grandfather took his shadow because by feeding his shadow so much and by being so close with it, he managed to make his shadow so powerful that his grandfather, who was very rich and in charge of a lot of things, stole his shadow to use it and to do things with it. Well, we later learn that's not the case. Edmund Carter is dead. He was killed. However, his shadow was not. His shadow managed to break free after Edmund died and then became so human-like that he basically became a human. But because he's a shadow, he doesn't have his own shadow. So basically, Charlie Hall has been dating in love with someone who's not even a real person. And yet they are. So, because clearly this shadow, who goes by Vince and at one point goes by Remy, it's a whole thing. Like they have little nicknames. And clearly they love each other and care about each other. But Vince is a shadow. He's not a real person. So it becomes very interesting towards the end of the book when, because there's kind of like, I'm going to say like an overseeing branch like of government, I guess you could call it, that kind of regulates shadows and shadow control and that kind of thing. And so when they find out that Vince is a shadow, they want to destroy him. They want to, you know, make him an actual shadow again, because it's very dangerous to have this kind of ability, because he's presenting as a human most of the time, but he still has the abilities and powers that a shadow has, which is like unbelievable inhuman strength, and you know, he can still turn into a shadow. And so it's a lot of these abilities that are very risky to just let someone walk around with. And we don't really actually know how it ends up that it's going to be, because Charlie Hall offers to basically have Vince become her shadow, because she gets rid of her shadow so that she can't be attacked with her own shadow when she's dealing with the grandfather and everything, because the grandfather's really, you know, the worst guy in this book. There's bad guys, but he's the worst guy. And she basically offers to let Vince become her shadow, and it's like, it's their way of like, I don't want to say punishing Vince, but they kind of need to see how he does in society with everyone knowing he's a shadow, and they select this whole thing. But we don't really know what's going to happen yet with Charlie and Vince, because that's how the first book ended, and now we have to wait for the second book to come out to see, do Vince and Charlie get to stay together? Does Vince get to stay human? Are they just going to be person and shadow for the end of time? Because they can talk to each other. Vince is still a shadow, but still has thoughts, so he can still communicate with her. So it's, who knows what's going to happen. I'm very excited to find out. I can't believe I have to wait so long. The second book doesn't come out until I think September later this year. But it's a really good book. It's really good. If you just like any kinds of fantasy like that, the idea that a shadow can be this basically weapon if you have the magic to wield it is very interesting and creative, and a fun story to read, honestly. And that's what I go after when I'm reading. Something that's entertaining and fun. There's definitely some sad parts in the book. Just learning about how lonely Vince's life was, and the horrors that Charlie went through when she was younger, how she got into stealing and how she became so good at what she does, basically. But I'm not going to spoil those. Even if you have watched this far and you haven't read the book, I'm not going to spoil those, just in case you decide to read it. It's a really good book. It's really well written, and I can't wait to see what comes with the second book that comes out later this year. So that is the end for this video. I can't recommend this book enough. I definitely list it in some of my favorites that I've read so far last year. And I will be making more videos about all the different books that I've read. I have stacks and stacks of books of just favorites that I've read. I love to have them so I can reread them whenever I want. I do post videos every Friday morning. I'm hoping to expand that and be posting more videos throughout the week. I will let you know when that happens. Or if you subscribe, you will get notified anytime that I post new videos. And if you don't subscribe, even if you're just watching this one video, thank you, because any interaction I get on this channel means a lot to me. So thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing if you do. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Comment if you've read this book too, and if you liked it or if you didn't like it. I love to hear from other people who love books as much as I do. And I love all kinds of books. This just happens to be fantasy, and I do love fantasy. So like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next week.